Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Holtzman.
Okay, thank you. I'll go on mute.
Roop's here.
Good morning. Sylvie's here. Good morning, Roop.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Hanging in there.
Maida Coleman here.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. We've
Morning,
got
Maida.
Coleman and Holzman.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, do you know how to turn flashers on the Model 3?
Yes, it's in the middle of the roof, like in the middle of the windshield, right above the console.
Got it. Thank you.
Right in between the two dome lights. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, and you can also mute on the screen.
Are you pulling off the road so as not to talk and drive at the same time?
Something like that. I'm chasing a 1975 GMC motorhome, and we're doing 45 on the highway here, so I need to have my flashers on, but I'm good to go.
Kenny is here.
All right.
Morning,
Good
Bill.
morning.
Morning.
We're all here, so we're going to start right at 11:15 because we have a lot of ground to cover today.
I just to let you know, something you guys can all appreciate, commissioners. I just pulled up out of my basement and put in remodeled our old farmhouse, and I have my Senate chair that I'm sitting in now.
Oh.
How did you get
all of you
your old Senate
Did
chair?
any of you get Senate chairs?
I was supposed to, and Ron wouldn't let the Senate administrator release it, really. It was a big fiasco.
Well, I actually have two. I have one from the olden days when we replaced them. It's about 50 years old, and then I have a newer one. I don't know how I got that one.
Oh, are you talking about a chair from the floor?
From the floor of the Senate, yes.
Oh, no, I was going to take my office chair, but...
Oh, no. We remodeled the Senate. When we remodeled it, we got all new chairs. So I ended up with an old chair, and then I have a new chair, too.
Oh, that's cool. Commissioner Coleman, did you have something to say before we go about that chair?
I was just gonna ask him how he acquired those chairs. I couldn't walk out of the Senate with anything.
I don't know. When I was floor leader, and I'm thinking it was a gift from the pro tem.
Is that like secret to the house?
No, I don't know. I don't remember. I know everybody got to take a chair from when they replaced the old ones. Everyone was offered their chair, but I'm not sure how I came upon this chair. I think maybe it was a gift from the pro tem or the set for my exemplary leadership. I don't know.
Wow, none of the pro tems I served would like me that much.
Yeah, ditto. I do have a voting box from the House when they replaced their voting system. All right.
Well, really quickly, for
Yes.
the record, I just want to note that I had an excellent majority floor leader my first year in the Senate.
Very good.
Thank
Very good.
And go ahead, please.
No. Okay. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover today, and it is 11:15 a.m. All commissioners are present, so we will go ahead and call this agenda meeting to order. Due to COVID-19, we're continuing to conduct our agendas via WebEx for the foreseeable future. Of course, I ask those planning to participate, please mute your phone unless you need to speak. First up is the approval of the minutes from May 13th. You all have seen those. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from May 13th, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those minutes are approved 5-0. We have five tariffs and new orders today that we will go through, and then a major case discussion. First up on tariffs and new orders, file number EO 2020-0312. This is in the matter of the true-up of the Empire District Electric Company's fuel adjustment clause. So Liberty Empire filed their FAC true-up for their 21st recovery period, which includes the billing months of June through November of 2019. Staff performed a review and recommended that the Commission approve the true-up amount. OPC filed in opposition to Liberty Empire's fuel adjustment rate tariff filing in a related file. The Commission will address that issue in a separate order. However, since no party opposed the true-up amounts submitted by the company in this file, this order approves the true-up amount filing, and I recommend that we support the order as drafted version 1. Commissioner Kinney?
I'm in support.
Commissioner Root?
I agree.
Commissioner Coleman?
I'm in support.
And Commissioner Holzman?
I support the order.
All right. All those in favor of approving the order as drafted version 1, say aye.
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 The order is approved 5-0. Next up, file number WC 2020-0194. This is Claude Scott, complainant versus Missouri American Water Company respondent. Mr. Scott filed a complaint against Missouri American Water in January. He failed to participate at a commission-ordered pre-hearing conference and then failed to also respond to an order to show cause as to why the complaint should not be dismissed. So the Commission's rules allow the Commission to dismiss a case for both a failure to appear and a failure to comply with an order, and this order dismisses the complaint, but with prejudice. So I recommend that we approve the order as drafted version 1. Commissioner Kinney.
I support the order.
Commissioner Root?
I'm in support as well.
Commissioner Coleman?
I support the order.
And Commissioner Holzman?
I support the order.
All right. All those in favor of approving the order as drafted version 1, say aye.
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 The order is approved 5-0. Next up, file number ER 2020-0311. This is in the matter of the Empire District Electric Company's filing for authority to implement rate adjustments related to the company's fuel and purchase power adjustment required in 20 CSR 4240-20.090. So returning to the tariff sheet to adjust Liberty Empire's fuel adjustment rate that I mentioned earlier, the company submitted a tariff sheet to adjust its FAC rate. Public Counsel opposed the tariff sheet because of the inclusion of coal inventory adjustments, which OPC argues are not recoverable through the FAC. Since the Commission's rule requires Commission action relatively soon, this order rejects the tariff filing, suspends the timeline for the adjustment filings, orders the parties to submit a procedural schedule, and directs the company to file a revised interim adjustment tariff sheet for the amounts that are not in dispute. So with that, I recommend that we approve the order as drafted version 1. Commissioner Kinney,
I concur.
Commissioner Root,
I'm in agreement.
Commissioner Coleman,
I support the order.
and Commissioner Holzman.
I support the order.
All right, all those in favor of approving the order as drafted version 1 say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The order is approved 5-0. Next up, file number AO 2020-0335. This is in the matter of Empire District Electric Company, Empire District Gas Company, Liberty Utilities Missouri Water LLC, DBA Liberty Utilities Mid-States Natural Gas Corp., DBA Liberty Utilities M&G, motion for temporary variances regarding electric, gas, water, and sewer tariffs and the impact of COVID-19 on Missouri customers. So the various Liberty utilities filed a motion on April 23rd requesting a temporary variance from their tariff sheets for the electric, gas, water, and wastewater companies so that they could suspend the collection of late payment fees and disconnections for customers impacted by COVID-19. They also filed tariff sheets that would allow for a temporary payment of credit of processing fees for customers who use credit debit cards to submit electronic payments. Last week, the Commission approved an order granting the requested temporary waiver of the late fees and disconnections, but didn't address the submitted tariff sheets. So both staff and OPC opposed the approval of the 5 tariff sheets allowing for a processing fee credit. Since it's unclear if what staff and public counsel state that the processing fees are paid by customers directly to the processing company and not to Liberty, it's unclear if that's actually the case. This order suspends the tariff sheet for 90 days so that the Commission can consider it as a dispute. So I recommend that we approve the order as drafted version 2. Commissioner Kinney.
I support the order.
Commissioner Roop,
I'm in support as well.
and Commissioner Coleman.
I'm in support.
Commissioner Holzman.
I support the order.
All right, all those in favor of approving the order as drafted version 2 say aye.
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 The order is approved 5-0. Finally today, file number ER 2019-0335. This is in the matter of Union Electric Company, DBA Ameren Missouri's tariff to decrease its revenues for electric service. Ameren and OPC filed a motion to modify the second non-unanimous agreement approved by the Commission in March. Ameren and OPC want to allow $3.5 million of the funds donated by Ameren Missouri that was to be used for low-income weatherization to instead be available for low-income energy assistance for people needing help paying their energy bills. This is similar to other actions we've seen by the utility meant to help people impacted by COVID-19. No objections to the motion were received. I support the order that approves this modification and recommend that we approve the order as drafted version 3. Commissioner Kinney.
I support it as well.
And Commissioner Roop.
I support the order.
Commissioner Coleman.
I'm in support.
And Commissioner Holzman.
I support the order.
All right. All those in favor of approving the order as drafted version 3 say aye.
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 The order is approved 5-0. So that concludes tariffs and new orders. We do have a case discussion today. This is file number ER 2019-0374. Judge Clark is handling that case. This is the Empire rate case. Judge Clark, you're on the phone.
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Okay. So we'll just go through this memo. Did you have anything to say before we start the discussion?
I could just give a brief introduction if you'd like.
Okay, please do.
This, as you said, was the Empire District Electric Company's general rate increase case. This was originally set for an evidentiary hearing at the Commission on April 14th through the 22nd. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the building was closed and the parties were asked to come up with solutions. We had looked at doing a potential video conference hearing. The parties eventually, on their own, agreed to submit the case upon the record and waive cross-examination of all witnesses and allow for some additional filings to address such things as Commission questions. Now, they filed a global stipulation between most of the parties, resolving all the issues as a black box settlement that was filed on April 15th. But because all the parties were not signatories to that agreement, under Commission rules, it defaults to a position statement. And as a position statement, the Commission must still determine all issues based upon record evidence to allow for findings of fact. Now, on May 7th, the Commission ordered the parties to file a list of any issues that were no longer in dispute, and those would be issues that were no longer in dispute based regardless of the Commission's determination on any other issues. And those issues which the parties filed as no longer being dispute were removed from Commission's consideration, much as they would be during a hearing when parties tell you that they've resolved an issue. Final briefs were due this, I believe, Monday, the 18th, and the operation of law in this case is July 11th. This memorandum, which is one of two, one for this week and one for next week, puts 15 issues for the Commission determination with sub-issues, which leaves 30 issues for determination next week. Most of those issues are smaller issues with the exception of a couple. And that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, thank you, Judge, for that overview. So before we actually get into the issues, there's a couple things about this case that I just want to say. First of all, I want to thank the parties and the judge for all the hard work in this case during unusual circumstances. As you mentioned, this was our first big case during the COVID pandemic, which disrupted how parties usually work and how these complex rate cases are usually negotiated. I just appreciate everybody adapting to that. That being said, it was a difficult and complex case to begin with, and I think that it presents us with some interesting situations. I mean, for me personally, when you look at this case, there were around 12 parties, and only one party objected to the global stip. And I want to be very clear, I'm not blaming any party for not signing onto the agreement, but once that occurred, we now are put in a situation where we have to decide each contested issue with a finding of fact based on what's in the record. For me, if 11 out of 12 parties are willing to accept and agree to issues, I'm inclined to want to support that agreement. But since we have to go through each issue, I want to make sure that the decisions that I advocate today are something that are going to be backed up in the record, even if they differ from the actual agreement that was reached. So with that, I just want to kind of go through the memo. First up, issue number one, we have the rate of return, ROE, capital structure, and cost of debt. So the first part of that, the ROE, what should the common return on equity be used for determining the rate of return? I'm going to go with staff, OPC, and MECG at 9.25. Primarily, I didn't find Empire's witness, Herbert's testimony, to be credible. I think that his predicted growth rate was unrealistic. He used the long-term growth rate of utilities at 5.8%, while the expected GDP growth rate was only 4.1. So because of that, I think that staff's and Empire's, I think that staff's witness, Shari, who said that Empire's ROE range is 56 basis points higher than the 2019 average authorized ROE. And I think that the methodologies used by staff and OPC are just more reliable in this instance. So I'm going to go with staff, OPC, and MECG at 9.25. Commissioner Kinney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to echo your comments. Appreciate the parties. I know difficult case under difficult times, and here we are now. I think obviously ROE is only one part of the whole capital structure, and I think it all plays together. Therefore, at this point, I'm going to go with staff's high end of 9.8 and Empire's low end of 9.8, and that would be my point. So ROE of 9.8.
Okay. Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I wanted to also just thank the parties and the judge. Judge is a great long memo, and I know this is a difficult case, so kudos to you on what you presented to us and the information we have. Would also like to just provide a little soapbox commentary on the interesting case here that basically shines the light on black box settlements. You have basically a black box settlement, so yes, you're correct, 11 of the 12 parties did agree, but then we are having a hearing now, and then when you actually go through the record, there's a little evidence to back up, if any evidence to back up those positions, which makes it difficult for us if we have to rely on the evidence. So again, it just shines the light on the interesting nature of black box settlements and how difficult they can be to substantiate when people ask you questions or the public wants to know information about how things are calculated. And when you go back, there is no information to back that up. So I'm going to step down off my soapbox about black box settlements and answer the question that's before me. I would agree with the Commissioner on the range that was put forth, and I would say 9.25 is where I would settle.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
Well, Commissioner Root's black box settlement statements I concur with completely. It's a big deal, and it's something that we need to always be reminded of what happens in these situations with black box settlements. I also agree with the 9.25% that OPC has positions on. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Holzman?
I agree with Commissioner Roop on the black box. I agree with Commissioner Kinney on thanking everybody. I am also at 9.25.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Part B of that decision is the capital structure. What should the capital structure be used for determining the ROE? I'm going to support OPC's position to use LUCO's actual average capital structure of 46% common equity and 54% long-term debt. In the Algonquin merger case, one of the commission-approved conditions was that Empire would apply the most economical capital structure. And I think that the main reason that that condition was included was to avoid a potential for manipulation of the capital structure by also looking at the parent company's capital structure. So I think staff misapplied that condition in their analysis of whether Empire or LUCO's should be used when they relied on information from the company that removed some of LUCO's debt. LUCO acquires financing for its affiliates like Empire based on its actual capital structure, which includes the $395 million of debt that was treated by Empire and staff as an off-balance sheet non-regulated debt. So I agree with OPC that it's appropriate to use LUCO's capital structure and also point out that that's how the commission has decided the rate of return in prior cases for Empire and affiliates. So I want to go with 46 and 54. Commissioner Kinney?
I think I can understand your reasoning with LUCO's debt. However, just a comment, upon graduation from college, I obtained my SEC Series 7 license to trade in the financial markets. And I think if we're going to give Empire a low ROE and OPC's capital structure, I think you can expect Empire to take a hit in our financial markets. And my thought with COVID-19 and an upcoming rate case coming soon, I would suggest in this time of uncertainty, we analyze this and allow our utilities to have an ability to show strength. Therefore, I'm going to support staff's capital structure on this for those reasons.
Thank you. Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the adjustment for the $395 million in the LUCO's is consistent with our previous order to find and use the most economical capital structure. So I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
I support OPC's position of 46 and 54.
Thank you. Commissioner Holzman?
I also support OPC's position and agree with the chairman.
All right, thank you. So next up is sub C of 1. What cost of debt should be used for determining the rate of return? I think if we're using LUCO's capital structure, we should be consistent and use an embedded cost of debt based on the third-party debt that LUCO guarantees. So I would recommend the 4.65% that OPC had put forth in conjunction with their previous capital structure recommendation. Commissioner Kenny.
I'll say with the actual cost of debt, which I found to be 4.85.
Okay, Commissioner Root.
Yeah, I agree with the 4.65 since we're using the cost of debt.
Commissioner Coleman.
I concur with the position of you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Root for OPC's position.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holzman.
I agree with 4.65.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 2, this one's fairly complicated. So I want to take it in 3 kind of grouped sections. First, A, B, and C, I think can be taken together. That is, should the GP and TEB rate schedules be fully consolidated? Should the commercial and space heating rate schedules be partially consolidated? And should grandfathered multifamily customers taking service through a single meter be given an option of being served on the CBSH rate schedules? So I want to take those 3 together. I will say concern that the class cost of service study is typically expected within a 5% plus or minus accuracy range on the revenue requirement for each class. But in its testimony, staff points out that due to the lack of a trustworthy data and due to Empire's higher than normal estimated billings, that no cost of study filed in this case is really that reliable for rate-making purposes. And this creates concerns about the best way to handle some of these issues. So since the company plans to file another rate case soon for issues 2, A, B, and C, I support Empire's recommendation not to change or consolidate some of the rate schedules. I do think that in the next rate case, Empire and the parties should file testimony on whether the grandfathered master metered apartments should be able to switch to the CBNSH rate. I also think that Empire should be ordered to submit an impact analysis or alignment of the commercial and space heating rates in the next rate case. So that's my recommendation on A, B, and C. Commissioner Kenny?
I think just to be obstinate, I'm going to go with staff on all 3 of them. No, I'm with, okay. I think we should partially consolidate, but I do. I think we should grandfather in the multifamily customers at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Root. Commissioner Root.
Sorry, you missed the first 2 sentences. I was on mute. I wanted to echo the comments about, yeah, I wanted to echo the comments about the unreliable data due to the really large amount of estimated bills. And this was a major concern just on the whole estimated bills. At every single local public hearing, the people lined up and it was just story after story of estimated bills that weren't even in the same even ballpark of what normal things would be. And so there was a huge problem in every part of the state that we had local public hearings about these estimated bills and how they just weren't even close to being accurate, and they got poor customer service when trying to get answers and stuff. So just making that comment. So that being the case, I think that definitely they have to submit an impact analysis at the next rate case. And I would be fine with the language that they come up with in the stipulation and agreement. So then that kind of covers issue number 2. just Jake, go ahead and use the language from the stipulation and agreement. And then on the grandfathering, I'm going to go with staff on that one. Yeah, I think the master meter customers should be allowed to take service under the rate schedule. Again, I realize this because I'm all for trying to give customers more choice and control over their situation.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman?
So on item 2A and B, I'm in agreement with Empire's position, but on the fathering of the multifamily customers, I'm with staff. So Empire on A and B, staff position on C.
Okay. Commissioner Holzman?
I agree with Commissioner Coleman. Same setup. Empire staff.
Okay. Judge, so that sounds like Empire for A and B and staff for C. Is that what everybody's got there for the majority opinion?
That's what I have.
I believe so.
That's what I have.
Okay. All right. So continuing on to, I want to take D, E, F, and G all together. This is how should Empire's revenue requirement be allocated amongst Empire's customer rate classes? How should the rates for each customer class be designed? How should any revenue requirement increase or decrease be allocated to each rate class? And how should production-related costs be allocated to each rate class? So the issue of how to allocate the revenue requirement between the customers has the same issue for me that I mentioned earlier, which is the lack of a reliable cost of service study, which makes it difficult to determine the appropriate allocation. So because of that, I support keeping the current allocations for class revenue responsibilities. I support going with staff's position to keep the residential customer charge the same. And within each class, I think it's appropriate to apply any revenue increase or decrease to the energy charge rather than the customer charge, and to apply it to each energy block in proportion to the revenue that block generates. So I do support MECG's proposal for having rate changes within the LP and GP rate classes apply to both blocks of energy charges for those rate classes instead of just applying it equally to the customer or demand charges. So as far as the production-related costs, or subpart G, I agree with staff that we don't need to order any particular allocation method at this time. So that's D, E, F, and G for me. Commissioner Kenny.
Mr. Chairman, I concur.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Roop.
Yes, I struggled with this one.
Oh, I thought you were muted again.
Yeah, no, I was just contemplating my thoughts here. You know, it kind of originally was, okay, we're going to have revenue increase, we're going to have revenue decrease, but I think historically we've always, we know there's a subsidy that's sitting out there, and MECG has asked us to try to chip away at that at every opportunity. So I think I'm going to go side with MECG on those three issues.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman.
On D, E, F, and G, I'm in agreement as stated by you, Mr. Chairman. Same position.
Thank you. Commissioner Holzman.
I also support the chairman's position.
Thank you. That brings us to H, I, and J, which I think we can lump together and finish up with two that way. So I know that staff applied a zero-intercept study for separating out, well, first of all, let me just go with H, I, and J are. How should planned accounts 364, 366, and 368 be classified? How should primary and secondary distribution plant facility costs be allocated to each rate class? And how should general plant facility costs be allocated to each rate class? So again, I know that staff applied a zero-intercept study for separating out the customer-related portion of the costs for these accounts, and Empire applied a minimum size approach. I don't think the results recommended by Empire and staff vary significantly, but I do think that staff has a valid point that since there were concerns about the reliability of the class cost of service studies due to the data sufficiency concerns, that there could be problems with allocating costs. And so because of that, I would be fine going with staff's recommendation that we not direct at any particular allocation method be consistently applied. Commissioner Kenny.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Root.
Yeah, I agree. And again, echoing the lack of quality data here on the bill estimations.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman.
I am in agreement also with your statements regarding H, I, and J.
And Commissioner Holzman.
Support the chairman.
All right, thank you. That brings us, that concludes 2, so it moves on to 3 jurisdictional allocation factors. What is the appropriate jurisdictional allocation factors to be used in the cost of service? I agree with staff's allocation factor here. Staff has applied the same method in Empire's rate cases for over a decade. I wasn't persuaded by Empire's claims that there were inconsistencies in staff's method, so I'm going to go with staff on this one. Commissioner Kenny?
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. It's consistent with what staff's done, what we've done in the past.
Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I agree. It's consistent, but I'm not deciding just because it's consistent. I don't think a quality or an argument was made to make us change that. So I'll agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman.
I concur. I think we should utilize staff's information relative to this.
Thank you, Commissioner Holzman.
Support the chairman.
All right, thank you. That concludes 3. So now moving on to 4. This is the WINAR and SRLE adjustment mechanisms. I want to address these 3 subparts of issue 4 together. Should the commission approve, reject, or approve with modification Empire's proposed weather normalization rider? Is it lawful for the commission to authorize Empire to implement a sales reconciliation to levelized expectations or SRLE mechanism, such as those staff and Empire are proposing in this case? And should the commission adopt staff's sales reconciliation levelized expectation proposal or approve the SRLE with modifications as suggested by the company? So I think that Empire has essentially moved away from its initial weather normalization rider and moved towards staff's proposed SRLE. I don't support the company's WINAR, and I agree with staff and OPC that it is unnecessarily complex and confusing for customers to figure out what rate they're going to be charged. The large increase of the estimated bills that Empire used during the test year makes me think that neither a WINAR or an SLRE should be approved in this case, to be honest. As staff pointed out, weather normalization models depend on usage, and if the data to determine the normal usage is not accurate, then there's strong potential for over or under recovery. I do, however, think that the commission has the ability to approve an SRLE, but I don't think that there was evidence to support staff's proposal, and I think it goes beyond what the statute actually allows in 386-266. So I don't think the SRLE is appropriate at this time. So that's where I'm at on A, C, and D. Commissioner Kenny?
Mr. Chairman, just to verify, so you are on A, you are to reject it, B, lawful, and then reject on C that it's you support OPC on that. Do not approve. Is that correct, or am I misrepresenting your state?
Yeah, basically, yeah, reject the WINAR I do think that we have the authority for the SRLE, but I don't think that it's appropriate at this time. That's where I'm at.
Okay, I would agree. So the reject, lawful, and OPC. Do not approve. So I support that position then, yes.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Roop?
I'm going to support it.
Yeah, I'm going to be
Thank
in
you.
support of those three. I want to reject it. I do think it is lawful. And generally, when it comes to, decoupling mechanisms, yeah, I think they're great. There's a lot of good policy reasons for those to reduce revenue swings, positive or negative. Gives them there's a lot of good things that can really come from decoupling. So I want to make that statement as I generally do like these. However, again, the lack of quality data, the use of bill estimations that is wildly ranging and has caused a lot of problems with the customers down there. It does not allow for this to be done in this case. So I would agree with Commissioner Kenny and you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Coleman?
All right. And on this, with A, staff's reject, and with B and C, OPC's position.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Holzman?
I echo the comments from Commissioner Roop.
Okay. That concludes issue number 4. Issue number 5 has some subparts to it, so we're going to work our way through those. 5 is the FAC. A, what is the appropriate incentive mechanism for Empire's FAC for sharing between Empire and its retail customers, the difference between its actual and based net fuel costs? I do think that a sharing mechanism is appropriate, but I'm not persuaded that it should be moved to 85-15. I think that 95.5 provides an incentive for prudent actions for those purposes that the company can control. And so I'm going to agree with Empire and staff on 5A. Commissioner Kenny?
Mr. Chairman, I notice there's been a lot of recent comments on the FAC mechanism sharing. We haven't deviated from the 95.5. I know Empire has had some hedging problems in the past. I think that is behind us. Therefore, I was not persuaded in any of the evidence that we should change at this time to the 85-15. So I support the 95.5 as you do.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Roop?
Yeah, no, I'm going to disagree there. I think if you ever had a situation that would justify changing to an 85-15, this is it. Commissioner Kenny was correct. They had some issues with their hedging. Just for those that are newer to the commission, they had hedging practices going back, since 2002, that they were using their same hedging strategy. Well, then the shale gas revolution happened, and the price of natural gas, dropped, and it continued to drop, and it stayed dropping, and it has been that way, until now, over a period of what is now 18 years. Throughout that time, they did not change their hedging practice, and they had lost in excess of over $100 million on their hedging practices, but never bothered changing them because, in my opinion, there was no incentive to change them. 95.5, they just were only exposed to a smaller amount of risk. And so they continued, even when you had utilities of the same size all across the country that all had changed their hedging practices in the mid-2000s, late 2000s. And you had some of them that just completely quit hedging due to the shale gas revolution and the long natural gas. And, all estimations are there's a big supply of natural gas. It was only until OPC shined the light on their hedging practices and the amount of consistent losses over a long period of time that this was brought to light. We made a big stink about it in a previous case, and a lot of good evidence was brought up. It was only at that time that light was shined on their continual losses year after year, over a decade, that they decided, well, maybe we should probably change something, and maybe it was incorrect. And so when you shine the light on stuff, it kind of exposes stuff. And really what it exposed to me was the lack of incentive at the 95.5 for them to act prudently. And this wasn't we're going to cherry pick 1 year out or 2 years and say, well, you should have done better. You know, you look at the consistency of something that's happened over a decade long, and they're using the same policy over and over and over with continual losses. You know, it shows us that, in my opinion, you know, just a lack of an incentive there for them to make a change. And I think that is when we had, you know, some other case discussions on the fuel adjustment clause. You know, this 95.5 was just randomly picked out of the air when it was first created. You know, and it was thought it would be revisited. It was kind of like a settlement of like, hey, well, we can just pick this and we'll come back to it. And unfortunately, that has just become the status quo. And we had a case in the Ameren case where, you know, OPC brought forth that you know, maybe it should be changed. And I believe almost every commissioner made comments that, yeah, there is a good argument for revisiting things, but in the Ameren case, there was really no evidence to show that they had even had any issues with, you know, an incentive for not changing a policy based off of things. And so in that case, you know, we decided to keep it at 95.5. But here we have a case where we have a, you know, 15, 16, 17-year history of somebody not having an incentive to change their ways until it was exposed and stuff, and they were kind of like, oh wow, maybe we should, because there was massive pushback. I think changing it to an 85-15 would provide them more incentive, because I think if you go back over the total number of losses that they've had on that hedging practice over the 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, I think if they had that extra exposure on that 10%, I think they would have addressed it. I think they would have said, oh, wow, you know, we're actually starting to feel the impact of this. We probably should make some change, versus like, well, it's only 5% and the customers are bearing most of it. So I think the incentive in this case would have been there for them to make the change if it was at 85-15, which I think is why we have, you know, this sharing mechanism, is to provide incentives to the utility to make that change. So I think the fact that there was lack of incentive with those massive losses over a long period of time to change their practice shows that in this particular utility, not all utilities, not a system-wide change, but in the facts of this case and the previous facts of how this company has operated, that the 95.5 has not produced the incentive for them to act in the best interest of customers, and therefore I think it should be changed to 85-15.
Commissioner Roop, you raised some very interesting points on this discussion, and I think that from our previous discussion on this issue, I think we were all pretty clear that the Commission certainly does have the authority to move to 85-15 in any case, should we choose to. So I'm interested to hear the discussion from the other two commissioners on this point in particular. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, you know, Commissioner Roop makes some very good points. And, you know, the incentive, you know, what is the incentive? I think he spoke very well. I've been leaning toward the 95.5 on this. But I do have to think twice and take a step back, I think, based on the very good points that Commissioner Roop just made. So I'm kind of leaning now toward adopting 85-15. Not sure yet, but I need to think about it just a little bit more. And so I'd like to see what a discussion we can have on this.
We'll come back to you. Let's hit Commissioner Holzman and then circle back with Commissioner Kenny and see if he has any additional comments. Commissioner Holzman?
I think Commissioner Roop laid out a compelling case. I would support 85-15, but I would also ask the question of whether moving to 85-15 might be too much of a jump from 95.5 and would propose perhaps if we go to 90.10 and see how that works. I would support 85.15 over 95.5, but I would be open to moving to 90.10 as well.
Commissioner Kinney, do you have anything to add to this conversation at this point?
No, I might add that I do appreciate Commissioner Roop's comments, very eloquent and very knowledgeable. I know Commissioner Roop has looked at this issue for years. I just know that during the last 7 periods, whether it's under recovery or over recovery, there's never really been a clear path that shows one or the other. They're pretty balanced. And that shows that they are working within the realm of the 95.15, and I don't know that that's going to change any hedging practices if they're pretty close now. So I'm going to stay with the 95.5. That's where I think we should, looking at all the financial decisions we've made in this. I think that's the position I'm just going to stay at.
Okay.
Commissioner, Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Looking back through my notes, I do think I'm going to stick with my initial thought of 95.5 based on, some prevailing arguments I have research on. So thanks a lot. I'm going with staff's position, the staff empire and the agreement's position.
Okay.
But thank you,
right.
Commissioner Roop, for a very thorough argument on this. I appreciate it. You always make me, I won't say always, but often you make me think twice.
Okay. Well, then let's go on to B, because I think we have 3 at 95.5. I think that this is an evolving issue, though, moving forward, to be honest. It seems like each time this conversation comes up, it gets more and more in depth, and we're hearing more and more arguments for, at some point, probably moving off of 95.5 with some more evidence. So with that, B is what is the appropriate base factor. I support the true-up base factors determined by staff, which is 23.33. The staff recommendation there. So Commissioner Kinney?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the latest number we have, so I would support your position.
Okay, Commissioner Roop?
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Commissioner Coleman?
I'm in agreement with that also.
Commissioner Holzman?
I concur.
All right, so now we'll move on to C, which has 3 subparts. We'll take those individually. So what costs and revenues should flow through Empire's FAC, including but not necessarily limited to the following? 1, what is the appropriate percentage of transmission costs for the FAC? I'm going to agree with staff to not change the percentage for transmission costs with 34% for SPP and 50% for MISO, and no percentage for transmission revenues. Commissioner Kinney?
I concur.
Commissioner Roop?
I am in agreement.
Commissioner Coleman?
I'm in agreement also.
And Commissioner Holzman?
Support the chairman.
Thank you. Second part, what, if any, portion of the MUJMUC contracts should be included or excluded from the FAC? I'm going to agree with Empire on this, that 100% of the revenue and fuel costs should be excluded from the FAC. The company's current FAC tariff specifically excludes revenue from full or partial requirement sales to municipalities and passing through to customers through off-system sales revenue. So I see this capacity contract with MUJMUC as a replacement for those prior muni sales contracts. However, I do support staff's suggestion for additional reporting requirements with the monthly FAC reports to show the energy purchases for MUJMUC aren't being flowed through the FAC and are instead being billed directly to the cities. So that's where I am on 2. Commissioner Kinney?
I would concur on 2.
Commissioner Root?
I'm in
Commissioner Root, are you
agreement as
muted?
well.
Oh, okay, sorry. Commissioner Coleman?
I'm in support of staff's position on this.
Okay, Commissioner Holzman?
I agree.
Okay, that brings us to subpart 3 of 5. Should any short-term capacity costs flow through the FAC from the effective date of this rate case? Yes, I think that if anyone wants to challenge the prudency of any of those short-term capacity costs that may result from purchasing power due to the Asbury retirement, staff and other parties can review that with an FAC prudency review. So yes. Commissioner Kenny?
Yes.
Commissioner Root?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
And Commissioner Holzman?
Yes.
All right, that brings us to number 6. We're going to take both of these subparts together. This is regarding credit cards. Should Empire's credit card fees be included in Empire's revenue requirement? And if so, what level of fees should be included? So I'm going to agree with Empire and staff that credit card processing fees should be included. I mean, typically businesses provide the ability to pay by credit card to customers for most services these days. If it helps the customers pay their bills on time and potentially avoid late fees or disconnects, I think that's a good thing. Customers are moving towards more smartphone and online methods of conducting business. And in fact, this is what people expect now. So especially now, I mean, during this pandemic, I think we're moving forward and we're going to see way more people looking for convenient and contactless ways of paying bills. So yes, and I think that as far as Part B on the level of the fees that should be included, I'm going to agree with staff's recommendation to base it on the test year and the jurisdictional allocation proposed by staff, which was a little over $1.1 million in that range. So I'm going to agree with Empire and staff, and then staff on Part B. Mr. Kenny?
I would agree yes on with staff and Empire on on A, and on B, I would take the actual for the past 12 months, which is Empire's 1.297.
Okay, Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I think the credit card fee should be included, and I'm going to agree with Commissioner Kenny. I think we should go with Empire's 1.297.
Okay. I mean, it's not that big of a difference. I'm happy to move there as well. Commissioner Coleman?
I am a yes with Empire and staff, but I support staff's $1.165 million. As far as the fees.
Commissioner Holzman?
I support the chairman's position.
All right. Looking back at that, I think it's more of a jurisdictional thing, and staff's number only includes the Missouri portion, which is why it was just slightly lower. So I'm going to stay with my original recommendation of staff's number on Part B of that. Next, we have issue number 7, rate case expense, A, B, and C. We're going to take those all together. How much of Empire's rate case expense should be included in Empire's revenue requirement? Should Empire's prudent rate case expenses be normalized or amortized, and over what period of time? And should Empire's prudent rate case expenses be shared between Empire's shareholder and retail customers, and if so, how? So we'll actually start with C and say that I support a sharing mechanism for rate case expense. Shareholders can see the advantage in some of the recommendations proposed by Empire in the rate case. And I know that Empire opposed sharing since they state that they were required to come in for a rate case, but an FAC is not mandatory, and the company and the shareholders can benefit from recovery through an FAC. So I think that a 50-50 sharing mechanism is reasonable in this case. And for parts A and B, I agree with staff's recommendation of $71,676 to be included in rates annually with a 2-year normalization. So that's going to be my position on this. Commissioner Kinney?
On A and B, I am fine with staff's recommendation, the number, and the normalized over 2-year time period. However, I think it is time. When I first got here, never before had we had shared rate case, and this is Daniel Hall's signature achievement on the PSC. And so I cannot find, he's finally gone, finally got an opportunity. I'm saying no sharing and end Daniel Hall's achievement.
Okay, Commissioner Roop?
I love how he framed that. That's hilarious. I am going to go.
I don't have that. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I don't have the institutional background there to go there. So, Commissioner Roop, what do you have to say about this?
Commissioner Roop has that institutional knowledge, as I do.
Yes, that's true. And speaking of that institutional knowledge, since 50-50 is the status quo, I'm definitely not going to change the status quo if we didn't change the FAC status quo. So I will stick with the 50-50 sharing and go with staff 71,000 and the 2-year normalization. So staff on all three.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman.
Well, I just can't stop laughing over Commissioner Kinney's comment. Thank you, Commissioner Kinney. That's a good one for me today. I am in support of staff's 50-50 sharing recommendation, and also the position of the 71,000 being normalized over 2 years.
Okay, Commissioner Holton.
I agree with that position as well. Staff all three.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner.
In retrospect,
Commissioner Kinney.
In retrospect, having served with Commissioner Hall for 6 years, I would hate to see his singular achievement disappear. So I am going to support the 50-50 mechanism as well.
So it's unanimous then. All right. Okay, so thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to 8, management expense. Should any of Empire's management expense not be included in Empire's revenue requirement? I'm going to agree in part with Public Counsel that some expenses should not be included when there isn't a reasonable connection to ratepayer benefits, but I don't agree with everything they suggest. I think meal costs that are related to meetings and training should be allowed. But I don't think that all the costs that OPC excludes for managers should be excluded as if they were executives. So I don't have a specific amount that I want removed, but hopefully the company and parties can figure it out and use that for some guidance. Commissioner Kinney, what do you have to say on 8?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would concur with you. I think the majority of expenses are that are justified should be justified, but I disagree with OPC's analysis of disallowance of over 3.7 million. So if we can come up with a solution to that, I'm happy. Otherwise, I'll just include all management expenses unless we can verify which ones we need to adjust. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Roop.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, but I want to throw out there a suggestion is that we basically just go in and disallow the Australia, London, and Peru trip expenses. That would be what we would disallow from OPC's list.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with yours and Commissioner Kinney's position on this.
Commissioner Holzman.
Yeah, I think you're in the right place on that. I don't know that at this point it's micromanaging each individual one, but I think just being reasonable with what, is a benefit to the ratepayers be included, like you said, the meals. So I support your position.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, I'm being informed that our WebEx is scheduled to end at 12:30. We're contacting OA to see if we can get that extended. But the good news is, if you're all okay with it, number 9, I'd like to push off to next week to have a more time to flesh out that discussion. So unless there's objection, we'll skip 9 and go straight to 10. And then we'll try to get through. If we can't get this extended, we'll just, whatever we don't get to this week, we'll tack on to next week and try to make sure we have enough WebEx time scheduled for that. Any objection with skipping 9, moving to 10?
No.
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 Okay. All right. So 10 is cash working capital. On 10A, what is the appropriate expense lag days for measuring Empire's income tax lag for purposes of cash working capital? I'm going to agree with Empire and staff that it should be 39.38 days. Commissioner Kinney?
I concur.
Commissioner Roop?
I'm in agreement.
Commissioner Roop? Oh, okay. Commissioner Coleman?
I agree with that, with Empire staff's position also.
Okay. Commissioner Holzman?
Support the chairman.
Thank you. B, what is the appropriate expense lag days for cash vouchers? I'm going to agree with staff at 35.14. Commissioner Kinney?
I concur.
Commissioner Roop?
I'm with staff as well.
Commissioner Coleman?
I'm in agreement with that.
Commissioner Holzman?
Chairman.
Okay. C, should the bad debt expense be a component of cash working capital? And if so, what is the appropriate lag days? I'm going to agree with staff that it should be in cash working capital, but the lag days should be set at 0. Since it's already been written off as bad debt, Empire isn't expending cash for it. Commissioner Kinney?
I concur with your comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Roop?
I agree with staff.
Commissioner Coleman?
I agree with staff also.
And Commissioner Holzman?
Support the chairman.
All right. D, what is the appropriate expense lag days for employee vacation? I could go either way on this, really, but I do tend to agree with Empire's position of 182.5. We should assume that people use their vacation time throughout the year, and I don't want to penalize a system that allows employees to defer some of their vacation time. So I'm going to go with Empire on 182.5. Commissioner Kinney?
I'm either way on this one, so I can support your position.
Okay. Commissioner Roop?
I'll go with Empire.
Commissioner Coleman?
I'm going to support staff's position on this of 201.02 days.
Okay.
I think staff found that it was most accurate, but again, I could go either way, but I've decided to support the staff position.
Okay. Commissioner Holzman?
Empire's position. Support the chairman.
Okay. 11, accumulated deferred income tax. Part A, should Empire's booked accumulated deferred income tax include a reduction for net operating loss? Yes, I'm going to agree with Empire and staff on this. Commissioner Kinney?
Yes.
Commissioner Roop?
Yeah, I agree with staff and Empire.
Commissioner Coleman?
I agree also.
And Commissioner Holzman?
I agree.
All right. And then B, should FAS 123 deferred tax asset for stock-based compensation be included in aided balances for the rate base? I'm going to agree with staff. No, this is an account for deferred tax assets for stock-based compensation. but I don't support compensation based on promoting stock prices focused on investors being included in costs that ratepayers specifically cover. Commissioner Kinney?
No, I support staff's position.
Okay. Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I'm with staff and a no.
Commissioner Coleman?
Same with me. I support staff's position, a no.
All right. And Commissioner Holzman?
I support the chairman.
Okay. 12, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, federal income tax rate reduction of 35% to 21%, impact period of January 1 to August 30 of 2018. Question A, how should the Commission treat the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act regulatory liability, with the Commission establishing in case ER 2018-0366 when setting rates? I'm going to agree with Empire and staff. I'm sorry, I'm going to agree with staff. 5-year amortization with no rate base offset for the unamortized amount. So staff. Commissioner Kinney?
Yeah, I would agree with staff's position on this. That we can't let the $11.7 million needs to be returned. I think the 5-year expense amortization is correct. I just will point out that a 9.25 ROE and a negative debt structure is going to be difficult on the company.
Okay, Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I agree with staff. I think that's consistent with how we've looked at previous AO assets and liabilities and how we've accounted for them in rates. So I'm going to be with staff.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman?
I'm with staff's position also.
Okay, Commissioner Holzman?
Staff.
All right, so that brings us to 13, which is Asbury. We're going to take all the Asbury issues together. A, is it lawful to require Empire's customers to pay for Asbury costs through new rates? B, is it reasonable to require Empire's customers to pay for Asbury costs through new rates? And C, is it unlawful and or unreasonable to include the costs of retired Asbury plants in rates, and what amount should be removed from Empire's cost of service? So the Commission has previously discussed this topic when discussing the test year. I mean, the test year approved by the Commission ends March 2019 with an update through September 2019 and a true-up through January of 2020. Asbury was still operating at the end of the update in September. And when the Commission addressed the test year previously, I think we made clear that rather than trying to deal with separating out and arguing over what costs were known and measurable and when it came time to Asbury's closure in this rate case, that we wanted to try to address it all in the next rate case. So that was the Commission saying that they didn't want the Asbury closure items to be trued up. Empire has made clear it plans to file another case within the next year. And I think that it's obvious that the Commission has the authority to direct items to be tracked in various accounts and for the Commission to consider all the financial impacts of the Asbury closure in the next rate case. So that's my position on Asbury. Commissioner Kinney?
So continue with the AO to capture the financial impacts that staff is wanting, correct? It's lawful, reasonable?
Yes.
And
the
AO will cover our issues in the next rate case. Yes, I support that.
Yes, which is what we've said all along. So, Commissioner Root?
Yeah, I'm going to be in agreement with you and Commissioner Kinney, but it's basically because we still use this historic test year, and that's why it's lawful and reasonable.
Okay, Commissioner Coleman?
Yes, I agree. It's lawful and reasonable. I'm in support of your position.
Okay, Commissioner Holzman?
I'm getting more up to speed on the Asbury situation. In the past, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, but didn't the PSC's position basically say we weren't going to address this until it came in for a rate case? Wasn't that the position that was taken?
Yes, that we wanted to address it completely in the next rate case and not adjust the test year for when this happened. in this rate case.
Yes, I support that position. I'm okay with taking a look at incentivizing the closure of coal plants, and I don't have necessarily a problem with tracking that. But I think that we need to honor the place that the PSC left us last time, which is saying we're not going to address it until we go with a full rate case. So I support your position.
Okay. All right. So I've been informed that the call should continue as long as the host doesn't disconnect. So we should be able to get through these next two issues. If we don't and the call disconnects, we'll just consider that an immediate adjournment with no business happening after that, and we'll just pick up next week so that we don't have any sunshine issues. So we should be good to go, but if we don't, that's an immediate adjournment, and we'll do it next week. 14, fuel inventories. What is the appropriate number of burn days to use for Asbury fuel inventory? I'm going to agree with Empire that the appropriate number of burn days is 60. Commissioner Kenny?
I would disagree. I think it has in the past been 60 with the coal inventory, but I don't think that's appropriate since it's a reported retirement date of March 1st, 2020. So I'll go with staff's inventory of 18 days.
Okay. Fair enough. Commissioner Root?
I'm going to go with Empire 60 days.
Okay. Commissioner Coleman?
As am I support the 60 days.
Okay. And Commissioner Holzman?
60 days.
All right. So that gets us to the final issue for today's discussion, 15, operation and maintenance normalization. We're going to take A, B, and C together. A, what is the appropriate level of operation and maintenance expense to be included in the cost of service? B, should inflation factors be used to calculate operation and maintenance expense? And C, what is the appropriate normalized average of years to be used for the Riverton State Line combined cycle unit and the common unit and State Line 1 unit? Again, taking them all together, I'm going to agree with staff on the appropriate levels of O&M to include. I'm also going to agree with staff that no inflation factors should be included. And finally, agree with staff on the normalization level of 3 years for Riverton, other units to be normalized over 5 years. Commissioner Kenny?
A, B, and C, staff.
Okay. Commissioner Root?
I agree. A, B, and C, staff.
Commissioner Coleman?
I concur the same on ABC.
And Commissioner Holtzman?
Staff for all three.
All right, so we did make it through the first half of this case. We'll pick up the rest of the issues next week. That's the end of case discussion. We will look at scheduling briefly, and that's all we have left. So obviously Monday is a holiday, Memorial Day, so everybody enjoy that. Tuesday, May 26th through Wednesday, May 27th, we have an evidentiary hearing in GO 2018-0309 and GO 2018-0310. This is Spire's 2018 ISRIS remand. That hearing will be conducted via WebEx with Judge DePel presiding at 9 a.m. Thursday, May 28th, is our next agenda at 10:15 a.m. So again, Thursday agenda instead of Wednesday for next week as we try to wrap up this Empire case discussion. Since the hearing starts at 9 a.m., we'll take a short recess to attend the agenda meeting. I think next week's issues are substantially less complicated than this week's issues were. And then we have an evidentiary hearing scheduled in MC 2020-0135. The manager of manufactured homes, v. Charles W. Brune and Anna G. D. Brune, DBA Brune Mobile Sales. That hearing is going to be conducted via WebEx with Judge Graham presiding at 9 a.m. Wednesday, June 3rd, back to agenda at 10:15 a.m. on Wednesdays. And then following that meeting, a presentation in AO 2020-0184 from Empire and Liberty about the transition to the Liberty name for their various utilities. Wednesday, June 10th, agenda at 10:15 a.m. With an Evergy integration update in EM 2018-0012 That's an update on the KCPL Westar merger at the end of agenda on that day. Wednesday, June 17th, agenda at 10:15 a.m. and Wednesday, June 24th, agenda at 10:15 a.m. Any comments, questions, or requests regarding scheduling through June 24th? All right, hearing none, we have no other business coming before the meeting today. Thank you, Commissioners, for working through these difficult issues and being flexible with the WebEx meeting. I'll catch you all next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Right.